NA to conclude the prelim. I had indicated I would make my ruling when I was able to reconvene, but then I wanted to chat with the attorneys who have all rejoined us. And I understand there may be some updates that changed whether or not I need to make that decision.
That's correct, Your Honor.
Why don't we start with Ms. Thomas on the position of the department?
Thank you, Your Honor. In our discussions, we had went over the link of substance use and the risk of harm to the children and whether there were alternatives to removal. And at that time, the department agreed that in-home jurisdiction at this point in time may be appropriate in order to have the least restrictive environment for the child, given that there are no other allegations in the petition about, like domestic violence or overdosing or neglect to the children. But obviously the types of substances that are being used are very concerning, and we believe that in-home jurisdiction would be appropriate at this time.
Mr. Brooks?
And with that decision by the DHHS, my client is willing to acknowledge and admit that the court has the right to take jurisdiction in this case.
Any position, Ms. Stang?
No position as to that.
Right?
Ms. Underwood?
Yes, Your Honor. I agree that at this time, in-home jurisdiction is appropriate. I do just want to note for the record that as GAL, I do have great concern for the welfare and the well-being of the children. However, I believe that this agreement is appropriate in order to help facilitate some services for mom and hopefully the safety of the kids.
All right, and with that being said, he's not here. Mr. Brooks, your client has been sworn. Ms. Gabriel, you remain under oath. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So is it true that you wish to enter a plea, understanding that the request has been changed to in-home jurisdiction and the request for removal is off the table?
Yes.
All right. So I went through a lot of the rights already with Mr. Esterline, and I'm going to go through those with you as well. Okay. All right. If I accept your plea, you are giving up the right to a trial by judge or a trial by jury. The right to have the petitioner prove the allegations in the petition by a preponderance of the evidence. The right to have witnesses against you appear and testify under oath at trial. The right to cross-examine witnesses, and the right to have the court subpoena any witnesses that you believe could give testimony in your favor. You understand you'll be giving up or waiving those rights if you enter a plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
With regard to the consequences of your plea, or in other words, what will happen, there will be continued investigation by the caseworker to see what the problems are in your family and how and whether they can be solved. The court could dismiss the case if there's no need for the court to be involved. If it appears that there's a problem that may be solved, the court can make the children temporary wards of the court, place them with mother or father or with relatives or in a foster home, and order programs for you and your children, such as counseling, drug and alcohol treatment, assessments, and parenting classes. If it appears that you will not be able to provide a proper home for the children in the reasonably foreseeable future, the court could terminate your parental rights. In regard to the plea itself, the plea can also later be used as evidence in a proceeding to terminate your parental rights. Do you understand the consequences of your plea, Ms. Gabriel? I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any questions about any of the information I've given you so far?
I do.
Is anyone making you admit to the petition? Has anyone threatened you in order to get you to admit to the allegations in the petition? Outside the terms of the plea agreement, which really effectively just took removal off the table for today, has anyone promised you anything in order to get you to take a plea? Are you under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or anything else that could get in the way of you understanding what you're doing right now? Would you say your decision to enter a plea is one you've made of your own free will? Very well. All right, as to the factual basis of the plea, Ms. Gabriel, obviously there's been a lot of conversation this afternoon about positive drug tests, about potentially you admitting to using some of these substances, as well as many other things in the petition. I guess maybe Mr. Brooks would be the better person to ask this. Are you admitting to singular aspects of the petition or just the petition in its entirety, Mr. Brooks?
Petition in its entirety, Your Honor.
So Ms.
We're
Gabriel,
not in the mood to dance.
all right, so essentially basically everything that's in that petition and everything that I've heard today is what I would consider. Do you understand that, Ms. Gabriel? Is that what you'd like me to consider?
Yes.
All right, very well. Okay. All right, any objections to the court proceeding on that basis, Ms. Thomas?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
So I guess the better question would have been, are you satisfied with the advice of rights and the factual basis of the plea?
I am. Your
I
Honor,
am,
thank you.
Your Honor.
Yes.
That leaves us with Ms. Underwood.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and do you also find that it's in the children's best interest for me to accept Ms. Gabriel's plea?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. The court finds the plea to be knowingly, understandably, and voluntarily made. I further find that the record does support that one or more of the statutory grounds alleged in the petition are true. There was a number of safety plans around using substances, providing chauffeur caregivers that were frankly violated here. There is evidence of use of really dangerous substances that obviously raise some significant concerns about whether or not, Ms. Gabriel, whether you are trying to effectively parent under those substances, and frankly, whether or not that could create a situation where you need emergency services because of some of the strengths of these substances that are being used. So there's a lot of concern here. The testimony about finding some of the leftover marijuana cigarettes where the kids could find them is also concerning, frankly. So for all those reasons, I do think that services are necessary and that there is a risk of harm at the home based on what I've heard here today, to the extent that the petition should be authorized and I can take jurisdiction under the statute the same statute sections that I took jurisdiction as it relates to Mr. Esterling, but obviously for the reasons of the use of those substances. I will also say that there's been a lot of argument today about whether or not use of substances is simply enough and whether or not we need to have more evidence than what we saw as far as perhaps you stumbling out the door, right? So there was very little evidence on that point. But part of what we talked about in the back is typically when that argument is used, it's about substances like alcohol or marijuana. The substances that we're seeing here, Ms. Gabriel, are significantly more dangerous. And there was a potential here that there is some case law out there that would have supported that simply using those substances would have been enough for removal. And I'm bringing that to your attention because I want you to understand that just because we're not removing your children today, I need you to take this very seriously and to really come to the table and talk with your service providers at Catholic Charities about why you think you need to use these things and about how that could be affecting your children. Even if you're meeting their basic needs, being around a child under the influence of a substance like this is surely impactful, right? They're going to know that they're going to be noticing this. This is not something we want to normalize for them. So I'm going to ask you to meet with the department to put together a case services plan that really targets those areas and improves things both for you and for your children. Okay? All right. I'm going to order the DNA testing for the other child as well, for Mr. Christopher Cassar. And I'd like to ask the department too, to, as you look at the case services plan, to look at visitation here. So obviously, Mr. Esterling only has every other weekend right now. I would really like the parties to come to the table to look at involving him more in their lives and maybe balancing that out with Ms. Gabriel's available time frame to work on some of these challenges that she needs to face. To look at Mr. Cassar's DNA testing to get that underway and also visitation if that's something he wants to explore in the meantime. Any questions on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll be back then to look at the case again and on those case services plans for both of these parents that are here today on November 4th at 1:30 p.m., as well as to have a look at that putative father issue for Mr. Cassar at the same time. I think I've given you some guidance moving forward. Was there anything else?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone, today for your time and efforts and your willingness to have a look at these issues to make things better for yourselves and your children. We'll see you November